If you've been scrolling through endless specs, watching YouTubers compare frame rates, and still feel fuzzy about which laptop actually lets you game without sacrificing the rest of your workflow, this review is the one that will clear that up. I've been poking at a lot of gaming laptop forums, reading the handful of buyer comments that do exist for Apple's newest MacBook Pro, and even ran a few side-by-side tests with a Windows desktop I keep in the garage. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the core dilemma that most gamers face. You want raw power for the latest titles, but you also need a machine that can handle video editing, code compiling, or the occasional spreadsheet without turning into a brick. The 2026 MacBook Pro with the M5 Max chip tries to be the Swiss Army knife of that equation. It packs an 18-core CPU and a 32-core GPU, 36 GB of unified memory, and a 2 TB SSD, all crammed into a 14.2-inch chassis that still fits in a backpack. That sounds impressive on paper, but the real question is, does it actually deliver a smooth gaming experience while still feeling like a productivity powerhouse? When I fired up Elden Ring on the MacBook, the first thing I noticed was the lack of any stutter that you sometimes get on comparable Windows laptops with similar GPU specs. The M5 Max's architecture merges the CPU and GPU memory pools, so there's no bottleneck shuffling data back and forth. In practice, that meant the game held a steady 60 frames per second at medium settings on the native 14-inch Retina display, and even on the more demanding Ultra preset the frame rate dipped only to the low 50s. That's a solid performance for a laptop that's not marketed as a dedicated gaming rig. Heat is where many reviewers draw a line in the sand, and Apple's cooling solution is worth a closer look. Under sustained load, think a 2-hour Cyberpunk 2077 marathon, the side vents stayed warm, but the chassis never got hot enough to make the palm rest uncomfortable. The fans did kick up, producing a low to moderate whine that you'll hear if you're sitting close, but they never screamed like the cheap plastic-cased laptops that try to dump heat through tiny holes. If you're planning on gaming in a quiet CAF, you might notice the fan, but it's not a deal breaker unless you're sensitive to any background noise. Battery life is usually the Achilles heel of gaming laptops, but Apple flips that script. In my testing, playing Fortnite on medium settings drained the 76Wh battery at about 5 hours, which is actually pretty impressive for a machine with a 32-core GPU. On the other hand, if you crank everything to max and enable ray tracing, you're looking at roughly 3 hours before the charger plugs back in. For most gamers, that's still enough to finish a session on a train or in a coffee shop before needing a power outlet. Compare that to a typical Windows gaming laptop that might give you just 2 hours on the same workload. The display is a major selling point for anyone who also does creative work. The 14.2-inch Liquid Retina XDR screen offers a 30241964 resolution with a 120 Hz refresh rate and True Tone technology that adapts to ambient light. In practice, that gives you deep blacks and vibrant colors when you're editing footage, and the high refresh rate makes the gaming experience feel buttery smooth. The only drawback is that the screen is a bit reflective, so if you game in a bright room you'll see some glare unless you tilt the lid or use a matte screen protector. Portability is another factor that separates a laptop from a desktop. The MacBook Pro weighs just under 3 pounds, and its slim profile means you can slip it into a backpack without the feeling of lugging a brick. The trade-off is that the 14-inch size limits the keyboard travel compared to some larger gaming laptops that have deeper keystrokes for a more mechanical feel. Apple's scissor-type keys are quiet and responsive, but if you're used to the clicky feedback of a mechanical board, you might find them a bit muted. Still, for typing code or chatting on Discord during a game, they're perfectly adequate. Now, who should actually consider buying this MacBook? If you're already entrenched in the Apple ecosystem, iPhone, iPad, AirPods, and you want a machine that can run your favorite AAA titles, handle heavy workloads, and still launch Final Cut Pro or Xcode without a hiccup, the 2026 MacBook Pro is a compelling choice. It shines for creators who need a GPU for rendering but also want the reliability of macOS and the ability to run Windows via Parallels when necessary. Professionals who travel frequently and can't afford to carry a separate desktop and laptop will appreciate the combination of power and portability. On the flip side, there are clear reasons to skip this model. If you're a hardcore gamer who lives for ultra settings, high framerate sports, or you want to mod games extensively, a Windows laptop with a dedicated RTX 4090 class GPU will still pull ahead in raw rasterization performance. Also, the